Hello, everyone. My name is Austin Cable, he, him pronouns. I'm a member of ETSU, East Tennessee State University, YDSA, and an at-large member on the NCC. I want to thank everyone for being here, and I'm very excited to get this convention going and see what path that YDSA is headed towards. Tonight, I've been given the pleasure of introducing our first guest speaker for the convention. He is a third-generation Caribbean American born and raised in Brooklyn. He has used his experience as a DSA member, as a public school teacher, and as a proud Socialist Union member to guide his activism in his community. He recently won his primary and is now the nominee for New York's 25th District State Senate election. Please welcome Jabari Brisport.
Thank you for the introduction, Austin. And hey, everybody in YDSA, congrats on your convention. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. You know, it's not easy being a delegate. You know, there is a lot riding on your shoulders. And, you know, I can tell you're taking it seriously and really making sure that you are putting all your time and effort into making sure these votes, they happen, and that you're putting your all into them. And thank you to the organizers that put this together. Especially for pioneering how to do a digitized national convention. I'm sure people in DSA are taking notes for how it's going to go next year. But truly, I have been consistently impressed by the work that I see YDSA members doing, what you've been doing, and I'm excited to see what comes next from y'all. I mean, you are the next generation of socialist leaders, and we are counting on you to join, be part of the movement. Change it, adapt it as you see fit, and keep on building in the struggle. So as Austin said, my name is Jabari Brisport. I'm in Brooklyn, New York, and I am the senator-elect, the state senator-elect in New York's 25th district. I'm actually one of 5 socialists that are going to the state legislature next year, and that's borderline historic. There haven't been 5 socialists in the state legislature in about 100 years. It's been about 100 years since the last time that happened. Coincidentally, about the same time there was a pandemic. There may be something about that. This notion of impending doom that makes people really start to connect with what's important in life, which is each other, not profit. So let's talk about the 5 of us that are in the slate. So it's me, Jabari Brisport. It's also Julia Salazar in Brooklyn. It's Farah Safran Forrest and Marcela Mateñez in Brooklyn for State Assembly, not Senate. Also Zara Mamdani in Queens for State Assembly. And I like to think of us as like the socialist Power Rangers. We all come from different parts of the working class. Before getting elected, Julia Salazar, she worked a lot in racial justice organizing. I'm a public school teacher. Farah is a nurse, a union nurse, and also a tenant organizer. Marcella is a tenant organizer. Zoran is a housing foreclosure prevention counselor. So we all bring a little bit of something from the working class. We're not your typical candidates. And I was really excited to be part of this. And I want to talk a little bit about why we won. We really reinvented how campaigns are done. These were a non-traditional setup where we collaborated at a scale that had never been seen before in campaigns. The 5 of us, we made joint policy videos together on something called Good Cause Eviction. We released joint platforms, one on decarceration, one on labor. We did joint events. We did joint press conferences, released joint statements in places in Brooklyn where, for example, my Senate district overlapped with Farah or Marcella's assembly districts. We did joint canvases or joint phone banks. We had joint literature. So there was a running theme of solidarity in the campaigns, a sense of we're going to work together and we're going to have each other's back, which is the bedrock of our movement. Right? It's like capitalism thrives on the competition and the ripping each other apart to get to the top because there can only be one. And socialism really thrives on the working together, a rising tide lifting all boats, right? Standing shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, and making sure we all get through. And that's what we saw in this campaign. And that's why not one of us won, but every single 5 of us won in a clean sweep in New York's state legislature primaries this past month. And I'm excited that we did that because we have a bold, universal program agenda that we're going to fight for, even in the midst of the austerity budgets that are being pushed by our governor, who hates taxing the rich and will make cuts to healthcare, to education, to housing, to clean energy, to transportation, everything the working class needs. He'll make cuts to all of that rather than raise taxes by a single penny on his billionaire donors. But we have allowed progressive socialist caucus coming into the state legislation next year that's saying, we're not doing that. We are going to raise taxes on those who can afford it to pay more. We are going to raise taxes on the billionaires, on these multimillionaires, and we're going to fight for a New York where everyone can see a doctor, okay? Where everyone can have a home, where everyone's child can have access to a good education, and where we are getting off of climate change on the fastest timeline possible. And in New York, where we are decarcerating far, far, far fewer people, right? And when we're defunding the police to invest more in social services. And it's good to be doing that in solidarity with this group because I've been watching the power of one. Julia Salazar got elected 2 years ago and was an extremely loud voice in the state Senate, pushing the envelope, pushing the conversation on decarceration, decriminalizing sex work, labor rights, housing justice. And now there's 5 of us, right? Our power has grown. And that's something I see in DSA and I see, in YDSA is the growth of our movement. We're still a very young organization. This era of DSA and YDSA, the post-Trump era, where we've seen explosion and growth, is very young. And I'm part of that era. I was part of the Trump bump, so to speak. I was actually in another socialist organization for a few months. They shall not be named. I switched over to DSA because the DSA was really doing the work. And I wanted to be part of something that was fresh and exciting, where people were pounding the pavement to fight for things in our local communities. A question that is going to arise as we continue to grow, and this is going to be something that YDSA is going to be a big part of, is how do we deal with having real power? How do we start to deal with the fact that we are shifting from an organization that is not just the people doing actions on the street and agitating, but also, which is very important and very necessary, and we shouldn't stop. But not only that, but also the people that sit in seats of power, sit in elected office, and are able to enact socialist agendas, right? So how do we deal with that growing power? That's something we have to address, especially in New York, and quick, because we just got a lot more influence in fell swoop that surprised a lot of us at the clean sweep. Another thing we'll have to deal with is, how other people will respond to our powers. So I'm going to share some of the slurs that are starting to come, because, it's like that quote, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you. So, they're fighting us hard. When I was running, I was framed as a candidate having the backing of a dark national movement behind me, Let me hold the DSA as the dark national movement that seeks to undermine local communities. And after all of us won, we're now being called as the gentrifiers. We have a mysterious gentrification agenda, which uses candidates of color as Trojan horses to undermine Black leadership. It's really ridiculous stuff that's being lobbied at us. And the only reason it's being lobbied, though, is because people in the establishment feel threatened. They were used to a certain way of nepotism and politics that relied on low turnout elections where they could really control the outcomes. And because of what DSA does, which is excite people and get people motivated to vote and generate huge turnout in these progressive elections, we're winning. And that's exciting for us and really scary for others. And we will need to contend with what that does and what that inspires in people and inspires them to say. And YDSA, you'll be a part of that. I'm excited to see the campaigns that you launch. I mean, you'll launch campaigns to confront problems that haven't even been addressed yet or haven't even come up yet. You'll have to come up with solutions to questions that no one has posed yet. And I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see what you have in store in the future in the same way I've been excited to see what you've already done. And, we are counting on you. I said in the beginning, you are the future socialist leaders. And I really do mean that. And I do believe that. And I want to thank you all for having me here. And again, special shout out as delegates. Like, I was a delegate for the National Convention at DSA. It's hard, working and finding camaraderie and, working with your comrades, especially when you're not used to organizing with them, working with comrades from across the country. And finding consensus and, coming to agreements and finding compromises. These things are very, very hard, and you're doing it. And there are a lot of people that can't do what you're doing. So I appreciate y'all. Thanks again for having me on. And I'm excited for the next chapter of both what my Socialist slate does, what you do, and what DSA does as a whole.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jabari. So I have a couple questions that I have come up with, some things that I think you could really give us a good perspective on for YDSA and help us out. And then if we have some time at the end, then we'll take some audience questions. So first thing, you're talking about your win in New York, and given your slate's recent primary sweep in New York, how do you see elections fitting into building the working class movement? And how can we take the successes that were first in Chicago a couple of years ago and now in New York, and use it across the country, even in rural areas like mine, to start winning more? Because seeing you all win was a big ray of hope, and winning feels really good. So how do we do that?
Winning does feel really good, especially when it's a win for the working class. Austin. I mean, I guess the most important part of running a class struggle election to me is that you name your enemy, right? So a way I like to delineate that when explaining it to people that are not in a socialist organization, what that exactly means is that a progressive might say, I want to build more affordable housing, whereas a socialist might name their enemy and say, I want to build more affordable housing. I also want to tax the rich, and I want to fight against corporate developers and corporate landlords. We agitate in such a way that we acknowledge that when bad things happen in our communities, it is not by a mysterious ether that pervades the air. We acknowledge that there are specific enemies, specific agents at play that are looting our communities, harming our communities, attacking our communities in pursuit of profit. So all of us continually, we're saying, we're going after corporate landlords and developers, right? When we're talking about housing, we're talking about going after charter schools. When we're talking about education, we're talking about going after privatization in the healthcare system and pharmaceutical companies. When we're talking about healthcare, we're talking about going after fossil fuel companies when we're talking about energy. It was continually saying we have enemies that need to be addressed, that need to be organized against. And people appreciate that. People appreciate having a target, right? It can be very lofty in the air, I want to do this X good thing for the community, but people like knowing that you're going to be fighting against someone specific who they know has been harming them, or maybe they don't know who's specific, but they have a sense that it's something being done to them, and they have somebody in the struggle fighting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and you named a lot of different struggles that the left really needs to address, and the world seems to be getting more bleak every day, and it can become hard to figure out what injustices to focus on when there is a fire that needs to be put out every corner that you turn. What advice can you give organizers about picking what battles to fight when there are just so many to choose from?
Yeah, that's such a personalized thing. I mean, one, no one can do everything, and no one's expected to do everything, and people try to do everything, end up doing nothing. So don't try and do everything. You have to find what you're most passionate about, and that's going to be your own personal journey, and it may zigzag all over the place. For me, when I was in college, my most organizing came around same-sex marriage. That was a big battle for me, and I'm openly gay, which I didn't say earlier, but I'm actually the first openly gay state legislator of color in New York State history, which is incredible. I got elected during Pride Month, yeah. But you have to find your passion and what speaks to you. And when I say zigzag, it's I was doing that, and then after we won same-sex marriage, I got swept up in the Black Lives Matter movement, and then I kind of zigzagged into electoral politics with Bernie's 2016 campaign. End up running for office myself. So it'll zigzag, but if you pick one thing that you feel really speaks to you personally, trust me, you will do amazing work, and it will be appreciated. And who knows what you'll leapfrog into next? You wouldn't think same-sex marriage dovetails into Black Lives Matter movement, but for me, that's what happened.
Yeah, awesome. So COVID has been the main thing that has really been affecting all Americans for the past couple months now. And I just wanted to ask, what advice can you give the thousands of young socialists out there that are about to go back to college and about to face arguably some of the toughest organizing conditions with our campuses going online and our ability to do face-to-face organizing being inhibited?
That's a great question, Austin, because even in New York, we that was a question we had for ourselves when we were in the middle of our campaigns, and all of a sudden we had to stop knocking on doors. We were all scared. Like that was our one, that was our thing. Like DSA is like we knock on doors, then we win we knock on a billion doors, and win elections, and then everything shut down. We were like, well, crap, So we had to really reinvent the wheel and do these mass phone banking operations, and we were very successful in it. So there will be some reinventing, right? Y'all are right now pioneering how to do a national convention online, right? We'll need to figure out like how you're doing club meetings or local meetings, digitally, and you have to figure out what campaigns you're organizing around. I mean, is it something such as that your school wants to raise tuition when you're not allowed to use any of the amenities, because that sucks. The campaigns will have to evolve too, like in terms of like what you're organizing against. But I would say like, you definitely have an opportunity still to organize. People are still available online. I'm not sure what the structure of your various colleges are, but recruitment's going to be important, and like as people that are entering these colleges, even a freshman entering an all digital college will still be looking for a home and looking for some sort of family, ideally some sort of political family too. And these are people that you should be speaking to, and that you can really help. You may change someone's life just by reaching out to them and showing them that they can have a home in your local YDSA chapter.
Thank you so much. So now I'm going to go to another tab and see what questions we got coming from the audience. It looks like first question, what are the limitations of electoral politics, and how does the organization exploit/deal with those limitations?
Yeah, I mean, I would say some of the limitations can occur in like just the way our checks and balances are set up, or like poorly set up. I'll give a specific example to New York, for example. Right now we don't have a veto-proof majority in the legislature, right? So I'm so pumped about having 5 socialists, but we could have theoretically 50. And if the governor wants to veto, he vetoes, right? And that's a limit, right? And that's something that's met, because he doesn't care. But like, if we had 50, socialists and also 50,000 people in the streets organizing, that's a compliment that is much harder to be overlooked. And I say that because the governor vetoes stuff all the time that it passes both House and Senate, but it's hard to veto a movement, right? So I would say that kind of answers both parts of the question. That's how the establishment, does it. And I'm sorry I'm just giving New York examples, but that's just what's home to me. We have this big thing now where we have even leaders in both the New York State House, New York State Assembly, and New York State Senate saying they want to push for taxes on the rich. Our quote unquote Democratic governor keeps saying that if you tax the rich, they'll leave New York. That's stupid Republican right wing talking point. So that's a struggle. So I was actually with a bunch of movement organizers and also another fellow of my newly elected, Marcelo Montañez. We just went out to the Hamptons on the far coast of Long Island, where some billionaires live, some billionaire donors who donate specifically to Andrew Cuomo, our governor, just to hold demonstrations outside their homes, right? Because we have to continually reinvent how we're approaching this.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Let's see. It looks like a lot of them are electoral, so
okay,
that'll be good. Okay, so with the defeat of Bernie Sanders and Charles Booker, it is beginning to look like our electoral success is sequestered in major urban areas, and even more specifically NYC. This person is personally from Western Kentucky University. Do you think the lessons of your win can be applied in swing and red states, or does DSA need to develop a new strategy in those areas?
I mean, everyone's going to need to come up with strategies that make sense for their own locality, but the lessons, I mean, are that you have to keep doing it. So I want to be clear. I mean, yeah, everyone's like, whoa, New York, these 5 wins, but it was not like that. Like even 3 years ago, like you could told us we'd be launching like 5 legislature campaigns in the state and winning them, I would have laughed you off, because we started off in 2017 with 2 city council races and we lost both of them, like bad. Like we had one in the Democratic primary, we had me as a Green, and I think we each got like around 30% of the vote. Like we lost them like bad. And we just came back anyway. We were like, well, we're just doing it again. So in 2018, we came back and we like long shot AOC and long shot Julia Salazar. We won both. And then even in 2019, we had Tiffany Kaman and we lost. We lost again. You know, we lost that race. And then we came back again and said, we're going to push further. So, you know, yeah, Bernie lost. He ran 2 presidential campaigns. That means the left needs to keep running somebody for president over and over again. And 2016, no. 2020, no. But 2024, maybe, right? 2028, you know. Same thing for Charles. You know, Charles Booker had, I don't know, had he caught fire in his sails a month earlier, could have been a whole different thing, you know. And that's just a lesson too of just like supporting long shot candidates earlier. But no, I think there's optimism here. Like these are all, as someone who lost their first race really bad and then won their second race, like the lesson is to just do it again. Like, you know, dig your heels in deeper, learn from your mistakes, lick your wounds, and do it again. And there's actually no better time to start than now. And it's okay if you you just dive right in and you lose. If you do it again, if you learn from it, do it again, you'll start winning.
Yeah, definitely. And just to add, you know, something, I'm from a you know, rural area in East Tennessee. I told you earlier that we voted like 70% Trump in 2016. And, you know, our YDSA chapter implemented a very large Bernie 2020 campaign, and we were able to win our county for Bernie Sanders. And so I definitely think that, you know, it's all about the grassroots effort. And, you know, I mean, we may not be able to do door knocking, but it's definitely about the person power. And even if you do live in a solidly red state, I think you can get some wins.
Yeah.
Let's see. We got time for a couple more. What is the explicit relationship between electoral politics and labor? As an elected official, how will you connect your politics to your constituency, the working class, and the labor movement?
Oh, I love that question because it is so important that we stop the like attack on labor in our country. And that's a great way where electoral can help. Like increasing union density, increasing like labor power is so critical to our office, our elected office as socialists, right? So, for example, stopping, I mean, well, New York is not a right to work state, but if you live in a right to work state, just repealing that, first off, you know, is a big foot in the door. But then also things like, you know, in New York, we have a big push to say, you know, if we, these things called project labor agreements, which are essentially, you know, causing a new project to be union made. But, you know, socialists saying that if there's a single red cent of government money going into a project, there's got to be a labor agreement, there's got to be a union, right? Why is the government subsidizing privatization, or sorry, non-union labor? And the reason why, because that's twofold, you know, as labor, if we as socialists in elected office make labor stronger, well, labor in turn makes the working class stronger. If the working class is stronger, we can elect more socialists. And it's a good feedback cycle that can ultimately like rip power away from the bourgeoisie and put it into the hands of the working class.
Definitely. Let's see. I think we might have time for one more. Let's see if I can find. Seems like all these are going around the same thing, but how can the infrastructure outside of the Democratic Party that campaigns like yours and other NYC DSA ones used be used now outside of the electoral space to build dual power and challenge capital and the capitalist class?
I love that question a lot because it is about so much more than elections, and this ties into like somebody asked earlier about the limits of electoral politics. So in DSA, we've been pretty good about making sure like we control like the data on our campaigns, and we retain like the people that said they were going to vote for a candidate, right? Those names, where they live, and that data, so that we can revisit them for things that are not a campaign about a candidate, right? We can revisit, well, when we were allowed to knock on doors, you know, revisit them and talk to them about a housing campaign, right? Or revisit them and talk to them about our healthcare for all campaign, or talk to them about, you know, XYZ campaign and how they can like plug into it. Maybe even just get them to join DSA, so we can build a structure that's beyond just, you know, just elections. And I think, you know, if all chapters just replicate that, it comes into play a lot too with like candidates that want to use consultants, because consultants like to keep the data so they can have their own infrastructure, right? So, and I know in New York, we in DSA we tend not to like really go really well with consultants because we get into like turf struggles. But that sense of like continuous engagement with people and building a base out, and even using elections as a springboard to build membership and build a base outward into other campaigns that are maybe non-electoral. That's a great strategy. I think it works really well. Our numbers and enrollment grows after every election that we run, whether we win or lose. We have increases in membership in New York City, and those people can get plugged into any of our other campaigns, whether it be housing, healthcare, racial justice, or energy, all the above.
Awesome. Okay. I'm not seeing. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. So thanks so much. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
You're all rock. You all rock. Keep doing your thing. At the end of the day, we're also socialists. We're also comrades. We're also in one organization. Regardless of how divergent our views on how to get to the abolition of capitalism is, that we are also comrades. Don't forget that. I do appreciate, again, being here. I'm really excited for the future of this organization and what y'all have to bring for it. Bring to it, excuse me. And I'll probably see some of you soon.
Yes. Thanks so much, Jabari.
Thank you.